So, welcome everyone to the Miracle Mommas Show. My name is Ashley Sabali. I'm the founder of Miracle Mommas, which aims to improve maternal health one step at a time and provide a voice for moms everywhere. And with me today is not only a wife, but a mom, a former pageant queen, and a current reigning USOA Mrs. Lake County, competing for the USOA Mrs. Illinois title this November 2024. She's also a very good friend, Lauren. And Lauren, thank you for coming on the show today. Can you tell our viewers and listeners about yourself?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I am married to my wonderful husband, Sean, and we have a 7-month-old who actually came on our anniversary, actually was born right after the pageant last year. So hopefully you'll actually make it to the pageant this year.
I know that was so funny because we were competing with each other last year, and I was excited to get to meet you in person. Then I found out you couldn't make it because you were preparing to give birth. But yeah, I'm excited to get to compete with you again. I know you're doing amazing things out there, not only in Illinois, but throughout the Midwest. And I'm also excited to meet your baby.
Yeah, she's such a good baby.
Oh, how old is she now?
She's 7 months.
7 months. Oh, that's the one stage. I mean, I love all the stages, but I miss the baby stage, like getting to hold them, and it's a sweet
Yeah,
stage.
she definitely loves cuddles.
An important conversation that I wish that we would be able to talk about more as moms and women. But to lead into the discussion, I'd like to provide some data that I got from the MGH Center for Women's Mental Health. And according to the MGH Women's Mental Health, during postpartum period, there's about 85% of women who experience some type of mood disturbance. For the most part, these symptoms are mild and they're short-lived. However, 10 to 15% of women develop more significant symptoms of depression and anxiety. Postpartum psychiatric illnesses typically are divided into three categories of postpartum blues, postpartum depression, and postpartum psychosis. So, Lauren, you're incredibly brave today to share your story, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And in your own words, can you tell us about your story, which kickstarted your maternal health journey?
Yeah, so I have severe anxiety disorder. I've had it my entire life. So going into having my daughter, I was very aware of the potential to have postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. Um, but I do feel like I can say I was not prepared for what actually ended up happening. After having my daughter, I surprisingly didn't have any of those postpartum blues or that postpartum depression necessarily. I was pretty confident. I was pretty happy. Everything was really good. Um, but right around that 3.5 month mark after having my daughter, I noticed my anxiety getting increasingly worse. And I was starting to become almost paranoid that something bad was going to happen to me or to her or just in general. Um, and fortunately, I was aware of that. I was aware of my anxiety and the potential for it to continue getting worse. Um, but there was one night that it just kind of hit absolutely rock bottom. I was so paranoid and so afraid that something terrible was going to happen. And it almost made me start questioning if it was worth it to keep living or to keep her alive because I didn't want her to have to live through some terrible, tragic event. And I was so convinced that this event was going to occur. Um, so with that, I also started to get paranoid that my grandma was going to take her away from me and like file for custody of her, which not happening, wasn't a thing, wasn't supposed to come up. Um, but I was just getting so afraid. And my doctor was like, hey, this sounds a lot like postpartum psychosis. You're starting to get delusional. You're starting to get afraid of everything. Now's probably a great time for you to check into a hospital and kind of get that anxiety balanced out. Um, so I actually did spend 2 weeks in the hospital, managing my anxiety meds and getting them back to appropriate levels so that way I can continue to work on being a great mom and spending time with my daughter, without all of that fear.
You know, I experienced I guess, postpartum blues, or what they were told me was the baby blues. After my daughter Grace, my son Kurt was born, and I would cry. It lasted like 2 to 3 weeks, and I would cry, and I couldn't control it. But of course, I know that postpartum depression and psychosis that's a whole nother level. And can you explain to me a little bit of the differences between what you would know if someone would have postpartum blues versus postpartum depression or psychosis?
So the main difference between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis would be the development of hallucinations or delusions. So for me, that started where I was convinced that something really bad was going to happen, and I was convinced that my grandma was going to take my baby. Those were the delusions that kind of pushed me into the postpartum psychosis category. But the postpartum depression is typically just filed under um, feeling excessively sad or depressed, or potentially numb, not really feeling anything. And those feelings can overlap with the postpartum psychosis.
And from what you've been experiencing and what you learned about postpartum psychosis, how long can it last for?
I really do think it depends on how quickly you get diagnosed.
Okay.
For me, I was fortunate enough to be aware of those symptoms and to know that this was a possibility. So my care team right away was prepared to look for those things. But there are other stories where that's not the case, and it took 4 or 5 months to actually get the proper diagnosis.
And are there like routine checkups that you have to do going forward for a period of time for them to kind of check in to make sure that everything is going well?
Um, Once I was discharged from the hospital, I've had a appointment about every 2 weeks just to make sure
Okay,
that things are good. And now we're spacing them out to just once every 3 months now that the meds are working.
that's great. And do you have any advice for moms out there who might be experiencing postpartum psychosis, or expecting moms who may not know, about this? Do you have any advice for them?
Definitely be aware of your emotions and your feelings, and don't be afraid to talk about them, because the easiest thing to do is to bottle them up and not express them and not discuss anything, and that's not going to help you or your baby. So the sooner that you just reach out and discuss, even if you're just feeling sad or you're feeling numb or anything like that, just reaching out and building that community, so that way if anything like this does occur, you're prepared and you have everything you need to continue being a successful mom.
And do you have any advice for loved ones out there who are concerned, like a boyfriend or a husband who's, their significant other might be going through this, or a family member who's concerned for a mother who might be going through postpartum psychosis? Do you have any advice for them of how they can provide support?
Always remember that just because something doesn't make sense to you or you can rationalize something doesn't mean that everybody can in those moments. It's really important to just keep being there and keep being supportive, even if you don't fully understand what's going on.
Thank you. That's great advice. And I know we were talking about privately before this, but can you tell me about your platform for USOA, for going up to the state level?
Yeah, so my current platform is kind of still in the works. It doesn't have an official title yet.
Okay.
But the basis of it is just volunteering and being involved in the community. So far I've done a series of different fundraisers. where we're working for animals, we're working for the homeless. And my most recent one was providing uh, care supplies to a local high school for students who might not have hygienic necessities at home. They're able to pick them up from the school now.
That's amazing. That you do incredible amount of work. I follow you on social media. You do a tremendous amount. Last year while you were pregnant, even this year with the baby, I think it's commendable. And as far as like with postpartum psychosis, going through this, are there any like coping mechanisms or things that you do that you could um would like to talk about that could be helpful for other women who might be going through this?
So I think it's funny. One of my favorite things to do now is to color.
Okay.
It's a way to kind of have control over something when you don't have control in other ways. You're in charge of picking the colors and the patterns and whatever it is you want to do to this page. And it's actually a lot more calming than people would think.
I can kind of resonate a little bit with that. I love painting like well, but not well, I do watercolor painting, but I also like paint on walls. Like I'm always changing like wall colors in my house, showing my husband. That's why I resonate like it's therapeutic. It's you can choose and that's nice. No, well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you would like to share for today's episode?
Um, I think no matter what, no matter how hard things are, or how tragic things might seem, just remember that you're a good mother and that your biggest thing you can do for your child is to take care of yourself.
Thank you, Lauren. And you are an amazing mom. I can't wait to meet your baby. She looks so pretty in the picture, so cute in the pictures. But thank you so much, Lauren, for being here today. I hope to have you on here soon sometime. And I'm very excited about your competition for USOA Mrs. Illinois. I wish you all the best for this November 2024. And thank you so much for again being on the show.